human resources function is one of the most unique areas in the workplace that continually reinvents and evolves to meet the ever-changing needs of businesses. And the evolution of HR, from a personnel department handling payroll and employee records to the department that manages talent and corporate culture, is one of the most significant transformations that we've witnessed in the business world. With HR hitting its stride in the past decade and being propelled into the global spotlight because of the pandemic, the function has only gained more credibility and respect, leading to its strategic role in helping guide companies. Hello and welcome to our special feature, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation, partnered by ET Now, an engaging and comprehensive series that seeks to understand how ZingHR's Outcomation can aid people leaders to take a purpose-driven approach that intersects with corporate strategy to help boost business outcomes. And with that, I'd like to welcome our panel of eminent subject matter experts to give their thoughts on today's discussion, Embracing Strategic Thinking. We have with us the founder, CEO, and managing director of ZingHR, Prasad Rajappan, Executive Vice President and Head of Corporate Human Resources at Larsen & Toubro, Dr. C. Jayakumar, Managing Director of EMA Partners India, K. Sudarshan, and Operating Partner at India Resurgence Fund, Ashwini Maheshwari. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us in studio. And Prasad, my first question comes to you. A board naturally comprises of a series of stakeholders that have oftentimes different understandings of the priorities of the board. And in situations like that, how does one go about communicating, building consensus, and ultimately creating the buy-in for the decisions that matter?
Thanks, Pooja, for having us here. As you rightly said, board priorities are now set based on the business outcomes they need. And if you see, any outcomes can't be done by one function.
Absolutely.
It can't be driven only by marketing or finance or HR or IT or the treasury. So when a board sets the priorities, over the period of time, the involvement of cross-functional teams is becoming very, very important. Hence, if you see now, most of the boards are comprised people representing those teams, right from this IT, finance, and HR. More and more people are getting to the board.
Right.
And one of the task boards have to articulate those priorities in a manner which people are able to understand and relate. And then the ownership is also on the CXOs to say what does it mean. And more often, it is required for them to collaborate with other teams to understand, whether, like I said, it is finance or marketing or other teams.
Coming to you now, Sudarshan, you've sat on several boards of sectors and sizes of companies that run the whole gamut. So what's your take on the skill sets that are most sought after today amongst that board of directors?
There's a huge transformation which has happened in the last 15, 20 years. And now technology today is at the core of every business. You could be in manufacturing, mining, metals, financial services, or digitally first businesses.
Sure.
So tech is at the core. So today I think the discussions in terms of the skill sets which are required to be successful in today's age and time is that we need executives who are more comfortable with technology, who are digitally savvy. And when you throw a problem at them, who start first thinking tech and not people, because tech is the enabler there, and of course people are the ones who have to drive this initiatives. But finally, if you look at the profile of a successful CEO today, he or she is extremely tech savvy today.
So when a company determines that their direction needs to change, what is the recommended course of action? Broadly speaking, is it to iterate on existing systems and structures, or is it to engage in a complete overhaul altogether?
The changes which often sitting either at the helm of the companies or the board I have seen are primarily two types. One is which is a sudden change, and one is which is a gradual change in the organization.
Right.
Now, typically, sudden change would happen if there are certain changes very quickly either in the business environment or there's a statutory change which forces you to completely realign. Now, these changes obviously would require a much faster response. This is something which you can't prepare for too much in advance. So these changes would require a reorganization completely, a different thought process. If you have to get skills from outside, create a different paradigm for people to think, that's how this change would get handled. Now, there's an external force change. But there are certain changes which are the ideal changes, are the changes which are slower, gradual, process-oriented changes. To give you a very cliched sort of an example,
please.
It's these vehicles. So from IC engines, if the companies are moving to EVs, people know that the environment outside is changing, so they have time. So they have time to nurture skills, they have time to reorganize, they have time to create a different business unit. They can actually create the existing business units as cash cows and continue to nurture the new units.
Right.
In such a change, I would normally recommend personally as that organizational structure is created, but the people are chosen mostly within the organization to the attributes which are just mentioned. People are flexible, they are tech savvy. So such people are identified and taken into the organization or for that particular business unit to take the initiative forward. The reason for that is culturally these people know how the organization function. So they would be the best suited to carry the change forward.
It's an interesting point, and I'm curious to see if Dr. Jayakumar shares the same sentiment. Because, sir, in your capacity as a human resources professional, when a company undergoes a paradigm shift, the skill gaps often bubble to the surface, right? So in such a scenario, what's the preferred method of action or the preferred course of action?
In our organization in L&T, we have a perspective plan, which is a 10-year head of planning, and then a 5-year strategic plan. From there, we make the budgets. So in that perspective plan, we look at the environment and change our portfolios. In fact, recently we have entered into SUFIN, that is supply chain and finance. Right. We have entered into a business called EduTech, which is in a technical education for all the engineering colleges. Then we have gone into data centers. Then we have moved very recently into semiconductor business. So when you enter into that, we need a totally new set of skill sets.
Absolutely.
This is one situation. Another situation, we are predominantly into EPC business. EPC business, it is based on the L1 tender. So we need to continuously reduce cost, improve productivity, improve the performance. So we have moved into digital transformation. We have brought in a whole lot of digital transformation into our operations. So here now we need to skill these people in these areas. So it is continuously skilling, reskilling, and multi-skilling. I'll take an example of a new business which we entered into, green hydrogen, manufacturing of electrolyzers.
Please, sir.
Power business is coming down. So a couple of people have moved from power business to the electrolyzer business. So now we need to look at how do we skill them in these new areas of operations. So it is a continuous process. And certain niche skills, when it is urgently required at a leadership position, which we do not have, we look at the external market, get them inside, but ensure that they are inducted inside, aligned with our culture and our way of working so that it works as a team.
Very comprehensively put, sir. Prasad, I'll come to you now. A board often struggles with providing the right direction such that an employee, an everyday employee, can focus on both the day-to-day tasks as well as the strategic direction and the strategic initiatives that can truly transform the direction of the company, right? So for professionals that find themselves in that position, how might you guide them, sir?
In the past, organizations used to have a large priority and move in that direction, and the employees also used to move and they used to work there for 15 years, 20 years, or maybe start for the retirement.
Right.
Today's career, I'm not talking of only Gen Z, even a person which is 45 looking at career changes and aspirations. I think aligning their aspirations with organizations is becoming key, and that is where the personalization is going to be important. As an HR professional or HR team, do you have the capability to understand the personal aspirations of the people?
Sure.
And that is where technology comes in picture. Right. You're not going to say this is blue collar, this is white collar, these are engineers, these are technicians. You today have tools to say what does an individual employee aspire for. Right. And can I use technology, we use AI and say, can I provide them career aspirations in my organization within different segments? If it's a multi-company like Dr. Jayakumar is saying, it can move somewhere else. But I think it's very important for people to retain and upskill talent, to understand their personal aspirations and then provide them options for that.
Well, Prasad, I've got a follow-up question for you there, because I think employees internally, as they do some introspection, they are gravitating away from the menial tasks and taking on a more strategic bent or orientation when it comes to their job, right? So how do people like you in managerial positions empower the employees to do so?
I have a model called the purpose versus means, and we run workshops on lean. What it came from the lean Toyota manufacturing systems to understand what is value added, what is non-value added. Often most of the professionals, for example, even HR people say, we're stuck with mundane work.
Right.
How do I don't get for strategy.
Right.
So that is what we run these two perspectives called lean and purpose versus mean, and eliminate those mundane activities and bring in not just necessarily technology, but change in processes. And that takes away a lot of those mundane activities and empowers people to do strategic activities.
Within AI, there's of course now generative artificial intelligence as well. So there's certain subsegments of artificial intelligence that are taking center stage. Can you, in a very practical way, walk us through how some of these tools have been transformative with respect to ensuring that the HR function is aligned with the priorities of the board, sir?
See, HR is going through a huge digital transformation. All the routine tasks has been moved to shared service center today. And the shared service center is fully automated, right from onboarding, background verification, or release of offer letters for campus interviews.
Right.
We use RPS, okay, robotic process automation, to do the entire process. If you look at other functions, right from the career portal, right from the sourcing of application, parsing of application, shortlisting of applications, selection process, everywhere the AI is being used. AI is being used enormously in the area of learning and development, curated courses, and it looks at the skill of the individual who is learning, what is the type of subject he is looking, what width and depth he is going. Based on his answering of the questions, it suggests the next type of courses which he has to take. In fact, there are coaching bots today. After you do a program, you can ask questions, you can clarify doubts. It's as good as a real professor sitting along with you. In performance counseling and performance continuous feedback, it is being used. So in every touch point, technology, digitalization, automation is getting part, and AI will be the next, I think the next year, whole lot of things will happen with generative AI in terms of the HR space.
Well, if I could ask you, Sudarshan, to give us a sneak preview into the future, how do you see generative AI transforming your industry in particular?
It's eliminating the, one is the repeatable, regular tasks so that people are not bogged down by that. So that means they can focus on specific outcomes where their impact they can actually see. Because today actually we are dealing with an aspirational India, right?
We are.
So everybody wants growth. They want to see growth in their career. They want to see the company in which they work. They want the company to grow. So it's actually, each is dependent on the other, right? So you want the organization to grow so that you could provide growth to your employees.
Right.
So it goes hand in hand. So in effect, I think technology is, or digital, I mean, all these tools are great enablers. There's a multiplier effect
Right.
on growth. And you're also building efficiencies and simplifying processes and not making it mundane for your people. Today, every employee today expects a cutting edge, a technology-led work environment. So that also has a great impact on your, even if you look at the sort of office spaces today, you're actually trying to transform the work environment to make it more energetic, participative for your people.
Right.
And it has a great impact on your productivity and efficiencies. But now it's another question, how many people go to office these days? The fact is, you want to create an environment which is growth-oriented for your people, and this really, I mean, it's in the theme, the similar theme with an aspirational India, and it's just not restricted to the metros, right? You look at India 2. I'm a big believer in India 2, the Bharat, what we all speak about, and the next set of the growth impetus is going to come from Bharat actually.
Coming to you now, Ashwini. Yep. We also heard Prasad mention the means versus purpose model, right? Which at its core is about growth. So essentially, how do you fine-tune the mindset of the employee, and what role does the board play in making that vision a reality so that they themselves internally are focused on that leap from means to a growth trajectory?
What all of us look for is when we are performing any task, it is not only the end result, but what am I performing the task for?
Right.
So there's a famous, I will make it very short, but there's a famous story about somebody said, I'm chiseling a stone. The other person said, I'm not actually chiseling a stone, but I'm making an architect or a mural for future.
Right.
So each person needs to see the mural which is being made. And the critical aspect is to break it down the purpose into very smaller segments, so that if a person, if an individual, if he or she is doing the job which is a very small fraction of attaining the entire goal, he or she should be able to understand what does it eventually lead to.
Right.
And that I think for the HR is one of the most complicated tasks at hand now specifically. Whether you are transitioning an organization from its current set, making the elephants dance, or whether you are doing an absolutely sudden change. If an individual is not able to identify and attach to what this eventually means for, at least 50 to 60% of your battle would get lost. So, absolutely pertinent question. Now, the way, your essential question was how do we address this?
Right.
So, that's the problem. The way to do it is we need to, what I have done in my practical reality is that across the hierarchy, one would need to appreciate as to what does that hierarchy wants. So at the Maslow's triangle, somebody would want money, somebody would want what are the larger purpose, somebody would want growth. So one would need to break that priority, that purpose into smaller subsets, which would get communicated at the various levels.
Sure.
So if it's at the lowermost level, I would then end up communicating that, listen, today you're making X amount of rupees or X amount of dollars.
Right.
If this is met, you're going to make Y amount of dollars. So that is what it is for you.
Yeah.
At a middle manager level, I would perhaps put it in terms of what does the growth, the intellectual growth means for that middle management. Does it mean that if the company grows, am I going to get promoted? There are more job opportunities going to get created. I can become a business unit head today from an assistant. So these are the second set priorities which I'll bring to the second set of individuals. For the CXOs, CEOs, the priority would be essentially what the stated purpose is. So if I'm going to build a new business model, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how the organization is going to prepare for future. So that's how I would break the purpose down into smaller, understandable, meaningful goals for the people across the hierarchy. And that's a very complicated task.
And perhaps the one word you left out was measurable.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there you go.
And Prasad, I want to come to you there, because saying embrace strategic thinking is, of course, all easier said than done. It's incredibly complex. You know, it's very difficult to simply tell someone, become more strategic. You need to provide that strategic direction.
See, one fallacy of saying strategic, people think the results are going to come long term only. There are strategic initiatives which takes long term, but there are a lot of things which can immediately.
Right.
And today's world of instant gratification, instant, like banking is real time, everything is real time. I think people want to know whatever they're doing, are they impacting the strategic outcomes? And that's what technology plays in place. For example, we're working on tools for saying, can I get my daily profitability?
Right.
Can I know whether my performance management annual appraisals have gone, and saying, I'm on the right path, or can I course correct?
Right.
If we, on a different analogy, we used to do our annual medical checkup once in a year, like once in a year. Today, you've got bands to say whether you're doing good or not.
Every moment.
Every moment.
Yeah.
So the fact is, today people want to see what is happening, and they want to be empowered to course correct.
Right.
And that is where tools and techniques and methods have to come to see whether I'm going to the strategy in the right way, or do I get n number of chances to correct it, fine-tune it.
I think that's very beautifully put. And I'm loving all of these, everyday examples. And I want to come to you, Sudarshan, with my next question. Could you perhaps share an example of a strategic initiative within a company that's enabled that company to build a more competitive edge in the marketplace?
Look at the traditional banking sector. Okay,
Sure.
I'm just taking that as an example. And how you see, they saw a threat of sorts when the new fintech players started coming
Absolutely.
in, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Today, I would think some of our largest banks are actually the largest fintechs. The way some of them transformed in the private sector, and even the public sector banks, taking specific examples of a bank like State Bank of India and what they've done on the digital banking side. So it actually, it's moving such large machineries of people, reorienting, reskilling them, and making them tech savvy and so on and so forth. So these are, companies take such calls when there is a threat for their relevance or existence.
Right.
Right. So that is where this big strategic shifts happen. Yeah. Actually, I would say the fintechs, the ones which started as pure fintechs, are the ones who are struggling now to keep pace with the original big daddies who have made that. Who had taken that pivot and changed. So it's we often underestimate the ability of large organizations to make that shift, but they do end up doing when they have sharp boards and leaders who are actually having their eyes to the or ears to the ground,
Yes.
and they ensure that they're able to maneuver their large ship and
Fair
make
point,
the
sir.
change.
Fair point. And coming to you, Dr. Jayakumar, how do you go about identifying and building that special task force?
Let me give an example of our own HR Lakshya plan. We have a 5-year Lakshya plan of the company, and we have also an HR Lakshya plan. In that, we have taken certain key initiatives. What is in DEI? Okay. In fact, we are predominantly into EPC business, and our percentage of gender diversity. We have a cultural diversity. We have people from at least 40-50 nationalities are working with us. People with 5 generations are working with us.
Right.
People with different states, cultures are working with us. But when it comes to gender diversity, the numbers are very, very less. It's hardly, it was 3 years back, it was around 4.5 to 5%, which was too less. Then we took a clear initiative on this, and today we have reached around 8.6 to 9%, and we are moving towards 10 to 12%. So we looked at key roles where we can bring in gender diversity, and we looked at what are the issues in this, how to retain. Most of us, then we went into a campus recruitment. We focused on campus.
Sure.
Last 2 years, 31% of our campus recruits out of 3,500 were from female. From different
Phenomenal.
lenses, and we brought in some innovative schemes inside this. There we found that the females go on maternity leave, and during this time there's a break, and they don't come back many times. So we provided them other facilities. If they go on a break, we ensured that the performance ratings do not come down. They have to be the same rating earlier or better than that.
Lovely.
So that very key initiatives we took, but it was monitored from the top, from the leadership itself. At every forum, every review, it was being monitored. So like that, we moved across. Like digital transformation is another initiative which was led by my CEO himself. Traditionally, EPC was seen as a brick and mortar organization.
Of course.
Today we use the high-end technology. Right from the entire machinery across our construction is fitted with RFIDs and sensors. So at any point of time, the data being pushed to the headquarters, where we have a dashboard where we know which of the machinery is working, what is the productivity, what is the efficiency of this machinery, what is the idle time. So entire thing is monitored. Same way business intelligence modeling. I will give one more example of, we built the tallest statue, which is the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel statue, which is 182 meters height, which is with the brass claddings.
Right.
So you imagine it is 3 lakh brass claddings are kept on that. So at 182 meter height,
Phenomenal.
you look at which cladding has to come to which place. Even a small zigzag puzzle, we find it difficult to fix it. So it's all fitted with RFID and laptops and computers. We know where this piece is kept, how to lift it, where it is to be placed. The entire thing is technology.
Yes.
We have done post offices across Karnataka using 3D printing. So we have brought in technology. This is again a focused strategic initiative to ensure productivity, reduce cost, bring in efficiency, which was highly successful. So very key initiatives to be taken, followed through. It should be measured, monitored, and it should be driven from the top.
Thank you for that, sir. And coming to you now, Ashwini, if you've got a special task force story of your own, we'd love to hear it.
When you have these very specific special initiatives, whether it is a sudden change or a gradual change, it had to be led from the top.
Yes.
And led from the top, so you would need to first identify what that one is wanting to do. So
Right.
I'll just take an example of one of the businesses which we are working in, and I was heading that business. The imperative was to get to a new business area or new business unit, which is going to be very similar to what we are making. But if you were not able to do it in a specified time, you would have lost a decent amount of market share.
Sure.
The way we did was that there's a task force from top which was created. The task force had a couple of very specifically identifiable things. One is it has to be cross-functional. So it's not only operations, or it is not only business which makes it success. There has to be HR angle to it. There has to be a supply chain angle to it. There has to be a projects angle to it. So task force cross-functional. Second, the task force mostly is picked up within the organization. And why for shorter of these periods within the organization is not only for purpose of skills, but also for purpose of cultural alignment. And that's where the have and the have-nots organization differentiate. The organizations which have it are the ones which keep upskilling continuously their task force. So what we did was we got a cross-functional task force within inside. Technology enabled it, but also ensured that we had milestones which said that if you're going to finish this off in X months of time, this is what the incentive to the task force would be, people involved, and if you go to Y months, this is what the incentive would be. It's a great sort of an incentive, and it came out to be successful. So that initial planning did help a lot.
Wonderful, sir. And by way of closing comments, I'd like to give you the last word, Prasad. As a company's mission and vision continues to evolve, right, it is a challenge for the board to ensure that its priorities are aligned with the larger purpose of that organization. What's the single most critical piece of advice that you'd give to that board?
We have been talking of a lot of strategy execution. We are talking of AI. I think one piece to be kept in the center is the culture, values, and the ethos of the company.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We wish you all the continued success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, our special feature, ZingHR presents Purpose-Driven HR for Business Outcomation, partnered by ET Now, comes to a close. Thanks for watching.